COVID-19 pandemic struck and it affected everybody. You know this already. It affected businesses, for example, the NBA. You know this too. The NBA returned under the most unique circumstances, and though it was tough for everyone, it also presented some advantages. Did you know that? Do you know the ways the virus helped the Lakers to win it all in the 2020 playoffs? The Lakers' dynamic duo. Another thing you likely are already aware of is that this year has had one of the most evenly balanced distributions of power that we have seen in a long time. You can't point to any super teams like we've seen in years past. The super teams of Golden State, Cleveland, Miami, Boston, they're all gone. What we have now are a lot of teams with all-star duos. We know, not all duos are created equal. With that sentiment comes some more fairness. The teams with more powerful duos tend to have less impressive supporting casts. The teams with duos that aren't at the top of your list tend to have deeper benches. Again, this was looking like quite a fair year, until the pandemic struck. When the restart was taking place, we knew there would be players who would opt out or players that would test positive and wouldn't be able to enter the bubble right away. Of course, all stars were prone to this happening to them as well, but the chances of a player from any given team opting out or testing positive for COVID-19, what with the strict protocols and guidelines, were pretty small. Given the fact that non-all-stars make up 13 to 14 of the players on each team, if a player were to opt out or test positive, it was more likely it would be one of them. And that is a spot where the Lakers had their first advantage. The Lakers duo was the best one in all of the NBA. LeBron James and Anthony Davis were in just about everybody's top 5 active players for 2020. No other team could say that. And though the Clippers and Rockets and Celtics and more could boast some excellent all-stars, they paled in comparison to the power of the Lakers duo. What does this mean? The non-all-stars of the Lakers team paled in comparison to their counterparts of other teams. So, if each team was in jeopardy of having opt-outs or positive tests from one or two of their role players, yes, it hurts any team no matter what, but it hurts the Lakers the least because their team power distribution was so top heavy with LeBron and AD, it mattered a little less to them than it did to everyone else. Avery Bradley opting out of the restart, it hurt the Lakers, but not as much as it hurt the Clippers when Montrezl Harrell or Patrick Beverley had to tend to issues and miss time, or when Lou Williams had to tend to an issue, stop for chicken wings at a strip club, and miss a lot of time. It didn't hurt the Lakers as much as it hurt the Jazz to be without Mike Conley due to the birth of his child, or when you consider the hole left in the Portland Trailblazers roster when Trevor Ariza opted out. Strangely, this was a year where a team's depth wasn't nearly the most important factor, which also leads us to our next point: talent, chemistry, experience. The 2020 NBA playoffs showed us that in the bubble, depth, continuity, and coaching all took a backseat to talent, chemistry, and experience. Depth still mattered to a degree, but it got a wrench thrown into it with opt-outs and positive tests, and a lack of ability to stop oneself from getting chicken wings at a strip club. Continuity completely thrown out the window for every team for obvious reasons. Teams that were banking on running a hot streak, good luck to you guys. And with the lack of FaceTime teams were able to have before the restart, coaching took quite a hit as well. Trying to devise strategies and out-scheme a team proved difficult if you don't have the appropriate means to practice them. Talent showed up big in the playoffs, which again leads us to the point in the direction of the best duo in the NBA in 2020, LeBron and AD. Talent doesn't get affected because of a long break. Talent doesn't get affected because you couldn't practice with teammates. Talent is there no matter what, and the Lakers had the most talent of any team's top 2 players. Previous team chemistry was a big factor as well. We saw this with the Clippers as they appeared to have the deepest bench and a roster with the most overall talent, but such little playing time altogether throughout the season. Games in which Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and most of the key figures all played together were actually quite limited. And with the struggles trying to keep Pat Bev and Montrez and Lou Will on the court, the Clippers lacked a ton of chemistry. The Lakers didn't have this issue as LeBron and AD had plenty of games with their entire roster. And even with Rajon Rondo coming in late, he had played with LeBron before and also plenty of time playing with AD in New Orleans. The Lakers' chemistry would have gotten an A+ at the science fair. The Clippers, well, they'd be lucky if their experiment didn't blow up in their face. And it kinda did, as they blew a 3-1 lead to the younger Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets who had, what you say, much more chemistry. Experience in the playoffs and the finals was huge too, because no matter what the circumstances are, having been in the high anxiety NBA playoffs and endured its accompanying stress is good practice. Who has more playoff and finals experience than LeBron? Playoff and finals experience can also be found aplenty within the careers of Rondo, Danny Green, JaVale McGee, even Dwight Howard. Compare that to the experience of the Lakers' opponents in the finals, the Heat. A decent amount of playoff experience over there in Miami, but other than Andre Iguodala and Udonis Haslem, have any of them been to the finals? So the Lakers had the most talent from their top two and the most experience overall, and in terms of team chemistry, they were among the tops in the league. All these factors point to them having a huge advantage. Mental strength. Here's another category where it just pays to have LeBron James on your team. You've likely heard from many NBA players while in the Orlando bubble that mental fatigue is real. Being isolated and quarantined in the bubble was extremely challenging for all. The situation wore down a lot of players. It goes against the norms that everyone is used to. It's difficult to adjust. Even Jeff Van Gundy was heard multiple times in the broadcast saying, "The bubble got to me." It's no small task to be dealing with the outside stressors of the world in 2020, being away from loved ones, and being confined to one area. Teams with the most mentally strong would gain an edge. And mental strength, oh, it's huge with LeBron. How else do you explain his ability to go to 8 straight finals? The grind it takes to endure 8 long seasons in a row with 8 extended playoff runs. Literally experiencing the longest possible NBA season from game 1 of the regular season to the last game of the finals, 8 times in a row. No one doubts LeBron has mental toughness. In order to have willed himself to go to that many continuous finals and to not have faltered along the way, to bring mental toughness to a situation like we saw in the 2020 playoffs, it's everything. LeBron has a place deep within his mind where he can go to and draw strength from. These were trying times he had never experienced, but he clearly willed himself through them. The weather aspect. You hear this all the time in football when a visiting team from a warmer climate goes up against a home team in a chilly setting like Buffalo or New England. It may be tough for the visiting team because they're not used to playing in the cold. The same happens when teams visit Denver and aren't used to the high altitude. Now let's get a couple of things clear right off the bat. Basketball is indoors, yes. The bubble was in Orlando, which is neither at a high altitude nor was it at a cold setting. But there is something to be said about the constant heat and humidity down there. If you've ever spent long periods of time in a humid climate and weren't previously used to it, that extra water in the air can start to weigh on you. With all the players living in Orlando for months, it doesn't matter if they're playing indoors. That humidity has become a part of their lifestyle. Now, great players can overcome things such as a little humidity, but it could absolutely have some of an effect on plenty of players who aren't used to it. Consider this. LeBron plays in LA where it's hot but not quite humid, but he's played a few years in Miami. He knows what it's like to operate in a climate like that. AD and Rondo both played in New Orleans. Rondo knocked some time in Dallas as well. Even Danny Green played in San Antonio. The Lakers had quite a few players that could much more easily adjust to the heat and the humidity. Is it so surprising the Miami Heat made it all the way to the finals? Give them their props, they outplayed plenty of teams. They're a great ball club, but they're more used to the climate than most teams. Even the Orlando Magic, who barely made the playoffs, lost Aaron Gordon and were looking like they would get swept out of the playoffs. Managed to get one win against Milwaukee. Chalk it up to the home team having a humanity advantage? Perhaps a bit. The point is, every little thing about your environment can make a difference. And when it comes to the climate, the Lakers had a lot of players that could adjust to that, namely their 2 stars. The matchup game. Now, when you roll all the previous 4 reasons together and mix them in with the team's overall skill and talent, you get varying levels of success from different teams. And those previous 4 reasons we detailed could have definitely played a role in how some other series finished. The Clippers lacked team chemistry in the bubble, game planning likely suffered as well. Denver was able to take out them in historic fashion. The Celtics and the Bucks were both taken out by the Heat. In addition to a lot of other reasons, neither Boston or Milwaukee was accustomed to the weather. Perhaps neither team had as strong overall mentalities as the player on Miami's as well. And these are important factors because the NBA has a lot to do with matchups. You can't always use the transitive property you learned in school. If you beat Team A and Team A beats Team B, you do not necessarily have the edge on Team B. Matchups from team to team vary. And the teams in the playoffs that matched up best against the Lakers were the Clippers, the Bucks, and the Celtics. Luckily for the Lakers, they all got taken out before getting a shot at LeBron and AD. Sometimes, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Final thoughts. In addition to their obvious skill and talent, The Lakers caught some breaks in the bubble, and catching breaks is a big part of the NBA playoffs. Whether it's matchups, mental strength, or even the weather, teams will take any advantage they can get. And don't forget, the playoffs were played at a completely neutral site. No one had the home court advantage. On a level playing field, you better watch out for the greatest player in the league. He is King James after all. Thanks for watching this UpNext Sports video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel, and leave us a comment if you think we left out any other reasons the Lakers were helped by the virus. And be sure to join us for the next video.